ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the best sports show in Kansas City. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW Radio, where sports come alive. Join your hosts, the awesome voice, and Coach 24, as they dive into the latest sports news, analysis, and excitement. From the biggest games to the most thrilling moments, they've got it all covered. So sit back, relax, and get ready for an hour of unbeatable sports action. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW Radio.
And welcome, sports fans, to the weekend eve. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW. I am Brian Kress, the awesome voice, and for the first time in about 4 months, my co-host, my brother with another mother, is here. He is live. The boys are back in town. Coach 24, Darwin Penny, how are you doing this evening?
It is a great evening to be back among the Kansas Cityans, this playoff baseball fever, and the Chiefs and everything else that's going on. I've been on the road too long. I am truly road weary, but glad to be back home.
Absolutely. And behind the scenes, running the show, DJ Scatter, Mr. George Walker. Mr. Walker, how are you doing this evening?
Well, I'm feeling just fine and ready to go.
Oh, man, I am so stoked. I'm pumped. The Chiefs are winning. The Royals are winning. We are winning. I mean, we are undefeated right now. So this is really, really awesome. So now, you know, the last month, ever since Vinny Pasquantino injured his thumb, it has been an up and down season because really the Royals had been playing very well. You just thought that they were just going to stroll into the playoffs. Now, I know that they still needed work. They needed to get things going, but they were playing well. And then Vinny's injury, and all of a sudden it's like kind of you're just driving along and you hit that pothole, and it was a giant pothole because it was like a canyon pothole. And so the Royals had struggled to cross the finish line. They were literally crawling and scratching and barely making it. So, but they did make it. So, how did you were on the road because you were scouting teams and everything else. How were you looking at the Royals this last month?
You know, it was a difficult last part of the year when you have somebody who had been one of the best runners and scoring position hitters all year. We had three guys that were unbelievable in Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, and Salvador Perez. We had three of the top five guys, run producers with guys in scoring position, and to lose that big left-handed bat that sits in between Salvi and Bobby created a challenge as how teams started to pitch Bobby and to pitch Salvi, and it gave them an opportunity to grow as a team. Everybody still, I think, needs to remind themselves of how young we are out there on the field, and we've still got six guys that make their presence in our lineup that have, you know, less than 4 years of major league service, including our all-star Bobby Witt Jr. And so we don't have guys who have a whole lot of playoff experience. And so the best thing that happened to us, though, was that we were having to fight to get in. We had drawn within one game of Cleveland. We were talking about winning a division when we started the month until before Vinny went down. We were still talking about winning our division. And then all of a sudden we found ourselves with 2 7-game losing streaks in a month's time. But to their credit, the boys buckled down and they got the wins when they needed. When we went to Washington, and then even the day that we lost to the Braves, we were able to back in because the Twins were struggling just as much as we were coming down the stretch. But our offense was challenged, but our hat goes off to our pitching and our defense. We still have one of the best defensive wins above replacement as a team within the whole Major League Baseball. And then our pitching from September until the end of September held its end of the deal. Our bullpen grew up, right? Remember last year, this time we were talking about how many losses we had because of the bullpen and a key acquisition of Urseg coming. really solidified the back end of our bullpen. Bubic is healthy, and he's pitched really well. Sam Long has pitched well out of the bullpen, and then all of a sudden we got in, started winning those close games when we needed it. And the best thing I think happened to us is that we had to fight every day to get in the playoffs. So now you come into the playoffs with that mentality.
So with that, so virtually since Vinny's injury, they had been playing like they've been in the playoffs.
Absolutely, we've had to, because we were working hard to try to make up for the loss of having a big bat like that in the lineup. And so everybody was probably even pressing a little bit. We could see Salvi, he was really trying his best to put the team on his back, and it was difficult for him. Then you have guys that are not as established. We made a couple of acquisitions. We brought in Tommy Pham, we brought in Robbie Grossman, and then believe it or not, I had viewed a couple of those guys earlier in the year, not thinking those guys were going to be on our team in September, and here we were. And then obviously Gurriel, with all of his postseason experience. I mean, this guy's played like 80 games of postseason baseball. And so I saw him in a AAA game, a month and a half ago, thinking, why is this 40-year-old guy out here playing AAA baseball? But you could still see that he had something at the plate that he could offer. And so next thing you know, he's on our team.
So Gurriel didn't play in the majors at all this year. So when you saw him out there, what were you thinking when he was there? He was playing, you said that he has a lot of experience, but at the time you were probably thinking, okay, he's just going to stay in there, I guess, in the minors for the rest of the season, and then hopefully maybe he'll get on another team.
I was thinking if anybody was going to use him, the Braves, because he was at their AAA affiliate in Gwinnett. And, we weren't thinking that Vinny was going to go down. And then all of a sudden, Vinny goes down, and we're scrambling trying to find somebody with some experience to fill in that role. But the one thing you could see, even with him still playing at AAA, because I can remember calling one of my dear friends in the scouting business. I'm like, why would you have this guy at the end? He hadn't had his birthday, 39 years old, playing AAA ball. And he goes, having Gurriel on the team is like having an extra coach on the team with the amount of experience that he has. And he's a good locker room guy. He's all of those things. And so next thing I know, he's in our locker room, not really thinking that it was going to be like that. But, the one thing you said is, like, he can still hit the ball really hard. He was still hitting balls in excess of 105 to 110 miles an hour. So he still had the strength there. Right. And so it's like, well, he still knows how to use a bat. So his value now becomes invaluable with the amount of postseason big game experience that he has.
So was that more important, or his ability to play first base to keep Salvador to playing catcher or even playing DH?
I think at the end of the day, you were looking for another big bat. We needed some more thump in our lineup, if you will, and so that's what he brings. He's more than adequate at first base, but it was the experience of helping this young collective group of guys get over the hump of, if you do get in the playoffs, who has the playoff experience besides Salvi, and then obviously we've got a couple of guys in the bullpen that have some playoff experience, and with Smith in particular, having been on the last 2 World Series teams, we're hoping it's going to be 3 this year.
Right.
So, but that's where you saw, okay, it's after the trade deadline. What move can you make with the least amount of damage to your system also? So you have to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you brought in Pham, you brought in Grossman, you brought in Gurriel. For J.J. Piccolo, before Pasquantino got injured, was he still looking for assistance and help? Because the trade deadline was already done. Now you traded for Gurriel, and a lot of people go, well, how did you do that after the trade? And I explained to people that because he was in the minor leagues, you were able to trade for him. If he was playing for Atlanta Braves or for whatever the major league team, you couldn't have done that.
You could have, but it had to then go through a series of waivers where other teams could say no, we can basically block that, and the team that's lowest in the standings could have claimed him. So you can still trade after the trade deadline, but there are now other stipulations that go along with it with other teams in the league, basically like having their approval.
Right.
Right, because what you want to do is prevent teams from stacking.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's just like, okay, well, we're going to all give everything to Brian's team over here to make sure that they win to keep this team from winning.
Right.
And so after the trade down, after July 31st, then all transactions after that has to clear a waiver period
Okay, so, and I get that.
at the major league level.
Right. So let's just, I'm doing a hypothetical because it's a massive hypothetical. Let's just say Kansas City wanted to trade Aaron Judge for Bobby Witt Jr. So you go through the process, and if somebody else came in, let's just say Houston came in and said, you can't do that, we want him, can you treat the trade like it didn't even happen
Absolutely.
at all? Okay.
Yep.
So that's at least a good thing there. So I thought, my personal opinion, J.J. Piccolo did a phenomenal job. I mean, within 24 hours, he already had picked up these guys. Was he already looking before that, before his injury, or was it just something just to look?
It's every day. It's an every day you're looking at ways to make your roster a better roster, not only for the regular season but for the postseason. So every day, you know, the scouts, we're looking at waiver wires, we're writing reports on players, looking for opportunities to improve, to make our 26-man roster a better roster. We know that in September you can extend it out to 28, where it used to be you could call up all the guys on your 40-man roster. Well, you don't have that ability to do that now, but it can extend it out to 28. And so who are guys that can make our 28, whether that's guys at Omaha, whether that's guys at Northwest Arkansas, or whether that's guys that we don't have in our system currently. And so you're already, you know, you always, you know, got your eye out, but certainly not saying we're looking for somebody to play first base for us. That's not what you're looking for, but you're always saying, is there a bat out there? Is there an arm that makes us a better arm or a better complete team? And so, but that really sends you for a scramble when something like that happens.
So anyway, so we got these guys outside of the bullpen, or actually the starting pitch, because the starting pitching actually struggled. Everybody struggled. Bobby Witt Jr. dropped 20 points from when he was batting 350. Salvador was really struggling with RISP. What was the strength of the team going down?
Our defense. We are by far one of the best defensive teams. We've got guys at multiple positions that play above the league average, whether it's Salvador or Freddie behind the plate. Mikael Garcia at third base. Bobby has played Gold Glove defense at shortstop. Kyle Isabel in center field is above average there. And I think collectively as a defense, when you play good defense, it makes your pitching better. And so now when your offense is struggling because the team is holding the team to fewer runs, it still gives you a chance to go out and compete. And so I think that our guys also became a little bit weary in having to go out and to play at such an intense level over time with still having a relatively young team. But we finally got our legs back up under. We took another deep breath, and then you brought in a couple of experienced guys like Pham, like Robbie Grossman, like Gurriel, that now gives you another little bit of breath of fresh air to say, okay, you know, we can finish this thing.
So what was the one thing as we were going down, or the Royals was going down towards the end, that really helped them to help push them through? to make it through the playoffs, because like you said, they had 2 7-game losing streaks. They had only lost 4 games at the most during the season, and yet they literally lost 14 games in so-called in a row.
Yeah, in about a 3-week period. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that we felt like we were playing with house money. Nobody had the expectation for us to have such a great improvement this year. And I think I want to give credit to Matt Quattaro, to Q, for not panicking. He didn't panic. It was just, you could wake up every day still saying, no matter where we are, if the season ended today, we're in the playoffs.
Right.
And I think he kept that across the players. Doesn't matter how many games we lost, we're still in the playoffs. If the season ended today, we're in, right? And I think that allowed them to just continue to work at getting better at what they're trying to get accomplished versus saying, I got to win, I got to win, I got to win. It's like I used to say to my hitters, don't go up there and saying, I got to get a hit. Go up there and say, I got to get a good swing off. That's what I want to do. If I hit it hard and somebody catches it, oh, well, okay? But to put the kind of pressure on myself to say I got to get a hit then starts to trickle down. And I think everybody just breathed a sigh and just kept that in our mind and said, doesn't matter. If the season ended today, we'd be in the playoffs.
Right. So as a major league player, as you were, how hard is it to go up there to say, I just need a good swing instead of saying I need a hit?
It's a lot easier when you're hitting well. When you're struggling in anything to stay on my routine. What is my routine? Baseball is such a long season that you have to create routines and to say, this is my process, right? We aspire to be process-driven people. And what is my process on a daily basis? Okay, what is my process on every at bat? I want to do this. I want to go through that process every day, the same. Every at bat, the same. Every pitch. What is my pre-pitch routine? I want to stay on that, because if I stay on my routine and if I stay on point, I know I've had some level of success with this routine. And I want to say that. Now, at the end of the season, I might have to go back and say, well, I need to reevaluate my process. But right now, I have to be committed to the process. And the process is every day we go out, we take batting practice, we're going to do these things. We're going to get myself to get a good pitch, right? Because I have no control over what happens once the ball leaves my bat. Okay, the only thing I have a control over is swinging at a quality pitch. Okay, I have no control over umpire's call. I have no control over a guy making a great play out on defense. I have no control over that. Control what you control, and I'll go back to our former general manager, Dayton Moore, who said, always keep the main thing the main thing.
So when you are going through this process, you have your routine, and it's every day. And so for a while you're batting well, and I'll use Bobby Witt Jr. He was batting well, batting 350, and then all of a sudden he's doing the same routine, but he's dropping 20 points in his batting average. How easy or how difficult is it for you not to keep on the same routine?
It's easy at that point to abandon ship. But the perspective you've got to take is look at the whole and not look at individual 2 weeks. If he looks at it from a holistic standpoint, man, I'm still having the best season of my career, of my young career. If I look at the last 2 weeks, or if I look at the last 3 games, I can now abandon the process. But what I don't want to do is I want to look at it from a holistic point of view of this is let's look at it as a whole. Right, I'm hitting 330, right? I might not be hitting 350, but I'm hitting 330, right? Who else is doing that? So I think that's the way you have to always approach it, is look at the whole. Don't get caught up in the minutia, but look at it from a whole standpoint. And I think that was one of the things that Q was able to communicate to the team. If the season ended today, because I know that's what, even being out on the road as a scout, I kept saying to myself, season ended today, we're in the playoffs.
Right. And how was it beneficial that Boston was struggling, Seattle was struggling, and then Minnesota who was ahead of the Royals, all of a sudden fell apart even worse than the Royals.
What you know is that in a major league season, everybody's going to have highs and lows. Everybody's going to have a hot streak. Everybody's going to have a cold streak. The question is, can you make your hot streak extend out or start another hot streak? And can you limit how long your cold streak is, right? When you get hot is as important as being hot, right? It's what we're looking at with the Tigers now, right? They've been the hottest team in baseball the last month of the season. If you look since the All-Star break, the Padres, if you look probably a month before that, you'll see the Mets, have put together consistency. But then you got teams like Cleveland and the Yankees who basically been on top the whole year, And so it's how long can you make your hot period hot, and how short can you make your cold period not put you in a situation where you can't. Injuries played a huge part in it. We had teams like Minnesota, just arms started dropping, and now all of a sudden you're rushing guys from AAA that may not be ready to get up there and put them in the middle of a playoff crunch. You just never know how guys are going to respond to that. When you look at our roster, we had, among major league teams, we had one of the fewest amount of turnovers on our roster. I think we had 12 guys that were on our roster from day one till day 162, right? They were able to stay on the roster, not go on the DL, and be there from beginning to end. That's pretty good. You look at our starters, very few of our starters had to miss starts. When you look at our top four guys, especially when you're looking at a Cole Reagans, when you're looking at Waka, when you're looking at Lugo, and when you're looking at Singer, those guys were up there the entire year, maybe missed one start or got pushed back a day. But to me, injuries played a huge part in it. We got our one big injury at the end,
right?
Which made us start to scramble.
Right, exactly, because all four of those pitchers that you mentioned, they all had 30 starts, and that's probably the number that you look for at the beginning of the year. If
Absolutely.
you can get 30 starts, then that tells you that
if you get 30 starts from 5 guys, that means you got 150 starts from a core group of guys. Most teams would be happy if we could get 120 to 130 starts. From your rotation
right.
When you break spring training and said we're going to get 150 starts out of these guys, everybody would sign up for that and take it.
Absolutely. So they go to Baltimore. Everybody was thinking that the Royals were going to play Houston, and in my opinion, I was worried if they were going to go to Houston. They've struggled, and then they lost the 4-game series when Pasquantino got injured. So I was like, no, I don't want to do that because I think the Houston matches up better with Kansas City. But Baltimore had been struggling, especially in the playoffs. And the last time that the Royals had played Baltimore, which was in 2014, they swept them. And I believe that was in the ALCS. And so they swept them all 4 games. And so now they swept them these 2. So now they've won the last 6. And Baltimore has lost the last 4 playoff games.
Yeah, I think they got a grand total 4 playoff series, but I think they got a grand total of 10 straight losses in the playoffs. At the end of the day, when you look at that, we felt like we matched up well with Baltimore, even though majority of people didn't give us a chance at beating Baltimore. We felt like we matched up well with them. You're going to have to beat somebody at some point in time. So whether it's a Houston, whether it's a Baltimore, the Yankees, whoever, Cleveland, you're going to have to beat somebody. But I think at the end of the day, once it was official that we had clinched, our guys were able to celebrate, take a sigh of relief. I think one thing that's missed in all of this is the White Sox. The White Sox last series in Detroit, which I was there covering that series, could have laid down
right.
and just said, hey, season's over for us. Matter of fact, we just set a record for the most losses in a season.
Right.
They didn't have to come out and play hard the last day. They did. They got a win. And now with us being tied and having a tiebreaker, it changed us going to Baltimore versus us going to Houston.
Right.
That was huge to the White Sox for just their guys going out there playing when they didn't have to. They didn't have any. We've already broken the record as the
Right.
most futile team in baseball, so we really have nothing to play for. But those guys went out and played with some pride and took 2 out of 3 from Detroit.
Absolutely, because they are professionals. And even though they didn't win very many games, they, as you said, they've set a record. They are still professionals. They still want to go out. They don't want to be showed up at all because of whether it's football, baseball, basketball, whatever. You don't want to get showed up at all because they're pretty much your equals. So they turned around and they matched up with Detroit, which had been the best team in the American League those last few weeks, or I should say the last month. Now, saying this, Detroit turned around, went to Houston, and took care of business. The Royals went to Baltimore, took care of business. So now Detroit goes to Cleveland. We go to New York. What will it take for the Royals to beat the New York Yankees?
I think we have to have more of what we had in Baltimore, and that's A1 starting pitching. I think we also need to go in and continue to play well and make the routine plays defensively and just come up with timely hits. It's not our job to go up there and out-bash the Yankees. That's not how we're going to win games. We're going to have to go up and we're going to have to get our running game going and play some small ball and then limit the damage that Aaron Judge and Soto do, right? We're going to have to make somebody else beat us. And that's not a knock on the rest of their team, but those are the big boppers, right? Keep those guys from doing what you call, irrevocable damage. The big momentum shift, home runs, things like that. And so, keep yourself out of situations where those guys are coming up with the bases loaded or with 2 runners on, anything like that. You want to limit those opportunities. But I've seen teams be able to control Aaron Judge in a short series, and this is what this is. This is a short series. This is 5 games, and so first to 3, and I think you can control him by a certain way that you pitch him and give yourself an opportunity to go out and be successful. But he does have protection in his lineup, but I think you have to go into in that series just saying we're not going to let Judge and Soto beat us.
Right. Now, Waka against Aaron Judge is 1 for 18, or Judge is 1 for 18 against Waka, and he is the starting pitcher Saturday, and he will go up against Garrett Cole. Now, saying this, do you think that Waka should totally challenge him, or should he kind of like pitch around him almost to a point of walking him?
No, I think you just got to pick your spots where you can beat Aaron Judge. If you can get the ball, in my opinion, up and in on him and get him to chase up and in, he's not good. When you allow him to get his arms extended out over the plate, he's Paul Bunyan, right? There's no park that can hold him. And I think one of the things we're going to do is really try to tie him up and or make him hit the ball the other way. It doesn't matter that he can hit the ball out the other way, but I think you got to pitch him the way you've been pitching him, that you've had success. I don't think you go and do anything differently and just go out and compete and have no fear. And we're playing with house money. We're not supposed to beat the Yankees.
Right, absolutely. So, for the Royals to beat the Yankees, they have to
come up with timely hits, play solid defense, and the bullpen is going to have to hold up the way it has been for the last month.
And what would happen if they lose to the Yankees? What would happen? What would the Yankees do for the Royals to lose the series?
If the Yankees consistently draw walks, I mean, they're really good at that, especially with Judge and Soto guys. Both of those guys had over 120 walks. If they consistently get on base via walk and not hit their way on, then we're in for a long series. I think that is going to be the key. I mean, we walked in this short series with Baltimore. We walked 1 hitter. I mean, that's the key to our success. Is we've got to pound the zone with strikes and make the other team put the ball in play, preferably weakly.
So, what is your prediction?
My prediction is the Royals in 5.
I've got the Royals in 5 too. And with that, we are at halftime on Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Coach 24, my brother with another mother, Darwin Penny. I've got DJ Scatter running the show, George Walker, and I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice. When we come back, we're going to talk just a tad more about baseball, just who else is playing, and then we are going to get to football because we got a lot of questions with football. And the Chiefs, they are the number one ranked team on my power rankings. So you are listening to KUAW. All right, we're back with the second half of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Coach 24, DJ Scatter, and I'm Awesome Voice. Just a little bit more baseball. The Padres swept they swept the Braves, didn't they?
They swept the Braves. Yeah.
And so that was the team that the Royals beat in order to get the second wild card. The Padres, as we were talking about, they have the best record after the All-Star break, and they have been playing great ball. And Michael King in the first game was just lights out.
Unbelievable.
And here's the thing, New York Yankee fans were all upset because he was a New York Yankee and they traded him to San Diego. So if the Royals end up beating New York, man, there are going to be call for heads there in New York for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge, but it's part of the game. He had never really established himself as a starter, and it was something that he wanted to do. And then finally, San Diego gave him the opportunity to be a starter full-time and not be what we would call a tweener, a guy who bounces back from the start into the bullpen. Sometimes that helps a guy with versatility, and usually a pitch short or whatever. But that was as dominant a performance that he had there the night. It reminded me of a former San Diego Padre who I still say to this day, with my own eyes, I was at the game, the most dominant no-hit performance I'd ever seen. And Kevin Brown, back in 1998 against the Houston Astros, threw a two-hit, 16 strikeout performance. In that, I don't know how a pitcher could have been any more dominant than he was that night. It was just electric stuff that he had against a vaunted Killer Bee offense led by Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio. So, but I mean, the Yankees, sometimes it's about fit. It's about change of scenery that maybe helps propel a guy's career, and maybe this is what it took for King.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other one, Milwaukee and the Mets, they are 1-1. The Brewers had, and I can't think of the guy's name right off the bat, he hit 2 home runs yesterday to extend Milwaukee and given them an opportunity to win today. And then Detroit took care of business against Houston. So Detroit will play the Guardians as we will play the Yankees. And so that is baseball for right now. So now we're going to go into the NFL where we've got the number 1 team in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, look, Kansas City has not played lights out. They haven't played like Buffalo Bill football outside of last week against Baltimore. But they do what's necessary to win. And then the devastating loss of Rashid Rice, who was actually coming along, and he was going to be he was the number 1 receiver. How does the Chiefs try to move on from this?
Well, I still say it's a quarterback-driven league, and when you still have the best quarterback in the league, we were able to see him make adjustments last year and the year before without a Tyreek Hill, or last year with all the drops that were going on, and he still just continued to again go back to being process-driven. Here's the right play, here's the right throw, here's the right read. I'm going to make it. If he doesn't catch it, it's not my fault, right? But I think in Mahomes, as the season wore on, he started to challenge those receivers a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, when the playoffs came around, those guys, made the plays that they needed to make. I think Kansas City has to. I'm more concerned about the additions at running back and the loss of Pacheco than I am receivers, because I know Mahomes is going to put the ball where it needs to be. We know he's uncharacteristically turned the ball over a little bit more in the first 4 games than he normally does. But I think at the end of the day, he's going to be who he is. I think he will continue to get back to leaning on Travis Kelce a little bit more. Some people are trying to write Kelce off because of his age and things like that. I think he will find a way to get those ball to those guys. He will continue to spread the ball to the backs, and with the addition of Kareem Hunt back in the fold and things like that, I think he will figure out a way. Andy will design plays and figure out a way to get the ball in the playmakers' hands. And so for the first part of the season, it may be those 1-score wins until they settle in as a team, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see more. Keep playing great defense, right? It's been so offensive driven in the Mahomes era, and all everybody did was complain, like, oh my God, we got the great offense and our defense is terrible. Well, the defense has evolved and become one of the top defensive in the league. Win on defense, and the teams that have put together dynasties have been able to do it in a multiplicity of ways. Right. If you go back to the old Steeler dynasty, when they first started, it was Franco right, Franco left, a little Rocky Bleier, and then hit Lynn Swann on the big one. Well, by the time they got to that 4th Super Bowl, Bradshaw was airing the ball out a little bit more. Franco had lost a step, Rocky Bleier had lost a step, and now Swann and Stallworth became this dynamic duo later in their career. And so I think that you have to work through that. The Niners, they were a different team under Steve Young than they were under Joe Montana, but they just was plug and play in this West Coast offense. And I think the Chiefs will find their footing. And right now, early part of the year, they may have to just lean on the defense a little bit more.
Absolutely. And, I hear friends always talking, oh my gosh, the Chiefs are horrible. Look, they are undefeated. They are 4-0. You got Baltimore, who has really been impressive the last 2 games, but they lose the first 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
You got Buffalo, who now just lost a game. You had Josh Allen already as the MVP, and he didn't even throw a touchdown pass against Baltimore. You just and Philadelphia, they're a mess. I mean, they look like they can beat one team 1 minute, and then they turn around and lose to another team. All I keep telling people is, look, the Chiefs are one win more for getting 3-peat. So every time they win, it's just one more win closer to the three-peat. And that's how you got to look at it. It does not matter how it looks. I mean, yes, in 2018 it was pretty. You threw long passes, and Tyreek Hill was catching passes. Look at Tyreek Hill now. He is on the lowest scoring team in the NFL, and that was with Tua. I mean, yeah, they're saying Tua is out and everything. Well, they were scoring little when Tua was there. The Dolphins have not even had a lead at any time during the season. The only time that they won was on a last-second field goal that was at 0-0. So I mean, and they're 1-3. They're 31st, I think, in my power ranking. So, but I've got to ask, what's up with Dallas? What is going on? Because last year the defense was so dominant, and it's not this year.
Well, you change coordinators. You're going to a new system, and what you were doing under Dan Quinn versus now what you're doing under Mike Zimmer. And I think there are some adjustments that have to be made amongst the players who are getting used to something new. It wasn't you hired somebody from within who basically, I'm going to keep everything the same. There's been some adjustments made. Their Achilles heel is still their Achilles heel, and that was stopping the run. Right up until last week, they hadn't stopped the run no better than you could stop a big nosebleed, and so they've had to work with that. I think the other thing is that they made what I call an error in judgment and not playing their guys in preseason more. Right, Dak didn't play a snap in preseason. You had some other guys that just did not play snaps, meaningful players, and I know people talk about the risk versus the reward of playing guys, but I think it matters from a continuity standpoint. CD got his money, and then he got a little bit beside himself the first games, and just throw me the ball and that type of thing. And I was glad that Dak did stand up to him and just said, hey, you're one part of this. You're a huge part of it, but you're still just one part of it. And so just do your job and don't worry about it. But the lack of a running game, I think, is the biggest thing. You can't stop the run, and you can't run. And so there were all these concerns about, especially when most people thought that Derrick Henry might wind up being a Cowboy because he had moved to Dallas. He'd relocated because his training guy, Guru, lives there, and there were talks. But I think for Dallas fans, you have to also realize, too, Dallas is a high-profile place. And the last thing you need to really do is bring in another high-profile guy sometime, especially when you were dealing with the contract talks with trying to extend Dak, trying to extend CD, and now start looking at trying to extend Michael Parsons. And so I think those things are key. I think there are some injuries. Not re-signing what was a great cornerback doing, and then Deron Bland being hurt. They've got some key injuries in some key places. I think Deron Bland being out is huge, because now you've been playing the last couple of weeks out on one side with guys who should be backup and special teams guys, playing at the corner. And so, but it's a long season. You're 2-2, could have been 1-3, could have been 3-1. There's a lot of things that woulda, coulda, shoulda. But they've got to shore it up on defense, and they've got to find some semblance of a running game by committee, whether it's Zeke and whoever, or however you find. If you get Dalvin Cook in the mix, I don't know, but they've got to do something to try to control the ball and give themselves an opportunity. Jake Ferguson being back last week, I think, helped. Because he's become very reliable at the tight end position. And so, they just, they've got to do some things. I don't think Washington is as good as their record is. I don't. I think, they've played a lesser schedule, but we'll find out.
Right.
I think the Eagles are probably a little better than their record, but I think their game management has been poor. I think the Giants are who they are, and I think they've improved, but they're still where they are. And then, Dallas has got a tough part of the schedule coming up. They've got to play the Lions. They've got to play the 49ers. So they're going to have to somehow sift through this till they can get to the back end of the schedule where it kind of lightens up for them.
Well, and I actually think that Dallas playing the Giants last week helped them out because the fact that they had been struggling really bad. Even in the wins, they were still struggling, beating Cleveland. But see, Cleveland is a horrible team itself, and at least Dallas has a stable quarterback, unlike Cleveland, who I still don't have faith in Deshaun Watson.
It is the place where quarterbacks go to die.
Yep, it is.
I will always say that.
Yep, absolutely. So you were saying that they didn't play enough in the preseason, but the Chiefs also did the same thing. They didn't play a lot of players.
Not a lot, but at least they played some.
Oh, so Dallas didn't play any. Oh, well,
when you talk about the starters, those starters didn't play any. CD didn't play any, obviously because he was holding out. Dak didn't take a single snap in the preseason. I think, the running backs, Rico Dowdle and Zeke, may have, between them, maybe played 10 to 15 snaps, and I just don't think that's good. I know it's a shorter preseason, but I think you got to get some snaps in.
Well, and I totally agree because you can be in shape, you can be in tip-top shape, but if you're not in football shape, it's a totally different.
I just think you need to be in a situation where your heart's beating a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to get that cobwebs off and to know where this guy's going to be when he breaks and when I throw this ball. There's not going to be any, well, I thought you were going this way. You got to work that out, and not always the practice field is not always the place for that.
Right.
You need a little bit of that crowd roaring and, getting that adrenaline pumping to know how that's going to work out in the game. And
now, do you think sometimes I know that in the preseason and training camp, they'll have two teams play against each other. They'll scrimmage. Yeah. Do you think those are the better things to do?
Well, I think those are fine, but even that, it's protected. You can't hit the quarterback. It's a controlled scrimmage.
Right.
And to me, that's not the same as going all out. And I think those are the things. And then most of the time, those are very vanilla. It's all scripted. We're gonna do all pass plays here. We're gonna do all run plays here, and it has value. Most of the time, it's the team that you're going to play that in that preseason game, and so you get those ones-on-ones. You get a little bit of action in there, but again, it's controlled, it's scripted, so that you can manage injuries, and so you can just get some good work in. Because what you really want is your receivers having to beat guys who are going to be on the field, not some guy that's going to be on the practice squad.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. Would you have rather had Marty Schottenheimer and Jimmy Johnson's practices in the 90s or today's practices?
Am I a player or am I an analyst?
You would be a player.
I'm a player. I'm going to take today's practice.
Right. But as an analyst, which one do you think would be much better?
I think you have to have a level of toughness in those practices that's going to create a mindset and that's going to create a culture going into your regular season. And so it was something when I was a high school football coach, I was like, we're going to have 3 days here, man, but we're going to get after it. Right. We're going to flat out get after it. And if injuries are a part of the game, we're going to get some ice and nurse you back up or whatever, but we got to go hard. You can't go out trying to worry about not having an injury, because then you have situations like, Aaron Rodgers last year, 4 plays into the season, he's gone already.
Right.
So I think you got to go out and you got to create the situation that you want to be successful in the game. You've got to go out and create that in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So saying that, do you see?
But that's what the players union wanted, though.
Right.
They wanted fewer padded up days.
Right, but aren't the injuries more now than they were in the 90s and 2000s?
One, we diagnose injuries a lot different.
Right.
So guys back then weren't making as much money.
Right.
And so it was like, hey, man, I can't afford to get Wally pipped. I'm going to get back on this field.
Right.
Right. I'm going to find a way. And they swear trainers to secrecy. I know even doing that in baseball. I told my trainer when I had a pull quad, if you tell the manager, I'm going to get you. Right. Don't tell him I'm hurt. Right. And so guys now with the guarantees and contracts and stuff, it's like there's no real reason to worry about if I get hurt, I'm still getting paid.
Right. So making all that money is good because it helps them.
It helps them and their
comfortably,
families. Absolutely.
right? But saying that, does it also hurt them because of the money?
I think there's other things that you have to factor in too. We got more turf fields now than we've ever had, and I think that is as big of a cause and effect to injuries as anything else. You know, with guys, because most of these are a lot of these knee injuries and stuff like that, because the ground doesn't give when these guys are making these cuts.
Right.
Right. We've got far more injuries that are non-contact injuries than we actually have from contact, and we have data that will verify that. You know, I remember having 2 or 3 high school kids, go down just making a cut. Nobody touched them, and
Right.
so I don't think that the physicality of it is, and I think too there's a lot less natural strength in these players. They're so muscle bound and they're so tight that these muscles that are attached to tendons, and why these tendons are tearing so fast, because they've got all these what I call non-functional muscles. They look good on the beach and in the mirror, but are those really functional muscles? And I think those are the things that we have to go back and do studies on as to why we're having more injuries. Same thing in baseball, right? We pitch fewer innings than Nolan Ryan and those guys, and we got way more injuries.
Right. Nolan Ryan tore his elbow up, but it was in his last game after 26 years of playing baseball.
Absolutely.
Bob Gibson never really got injured.
Right.
Denny McClain.
So
and you can
were they just physically better men?
No.
But I think the other thing is, and I talk to parents a lot about this with youth, is you've played one sport. All those guys were multiple sport athletes,
Right.
and they had complete bodies, versus kids that play one sport and they tend to beat up the same muscle. Eventually it's going to give.
Right, exactly. And you're supposed to work out all those muscles, because if I go to work and then I go try to work out, I use working out those different muscles than I would at work. So I'm like, I can't lift hardly anything but I can pick up all these big old heavy boxes. Well, it's because I'm conditioned to do that. But you're absolutely right. You've got to, you have to work your whole body. It's almost like saying, I'm only going to use half my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You have to use your complete mind.
I think my wife said that about me. He only uses half his mind.
Oh, and by the way, are you still on a 1-year contract with her?
I'm still on a 1-year contract. 35 years, I'm still on a 1-year contract. I'm just trying to get a long-term deal.
Yep.
CD got a new deal, but DP can't get a new deal.
And by the way, happy anniversary to
Thank
you and
you.
Maria. You guys are so awesome. I love you guys. So we are nearing the end of Any Given Sunday. Before we get to Penny for Your Thoughts, I just wanted to do a shout out to John Amos, who passed away. And the story I have is that when 10 years ago I went to Stanford's and saw him perform at the Comedy Club, and he was talking about how he tried out for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I thought he was a fast man because I seen him in Roots.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was running out in that field, I'm telling you what, I was like, nobody's going to catch this guy. But obviously when he was playing with the other guys, that obviously he wasn't fast enough. But Hank Stram, told him that he should go into acting. He would be phenomenal and everything, and he gives credit to him. But John Amos was a phenomenal person, and he was so he was awesome. And I got to meet him, got a picture with him, got to chat with him for a moment, and he reminded me of my father. He was just brutally tough. I mean, if you ever seen James Evans on Good Times, that was my dad. He had that soft side, but you had to break a lot of layers, so-called onion layers, to get to that. But he was just a phenomenal person, and it is so sad that he had passed away along with Dikembe Mutombo. He had brain cancer. He was our age, 58 years old. So, but we are now at the best segment of the show, Penny, for your thoughts.
Yeah, today we want to look at a couple of things surrounding baseball. Most of you who are able to view us via Facebook Live can see that Brian has on a Cincinnati Reds jersey. On the back is the number 14, Pete Rose. Pete Rose is so many of our childhood hero at the way he played the game. Charlie Hustle, as they called him. Sprinting from home plate to first base when he got a walk just looked like every day he was glad to be there. The only guy in Major League Baseball history to play over 500 games at 6 different positions. And so the shame is that Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fames were meant to tell stories, to tell the story of baseball. Baseball story is incomplete without Pete Rose. We know that Pete did an unthinkable thing in betting on the game of baseball, and it's clear in our guidelines and stuff, though. But just the opportunity for redemption in this country is part of what this country has been made of, people who can make mistakes and been redeemed and everything, but Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. And so we definitely, our heartfelt prayers go out to Pete Rose II and the rest of his family. I personally got to know Pete Rose II, his son, by playing against him, in the minor leagues, and just knowing how great of a young man that he was and had those same intangibles as how he played the game like his father. But also we want to recognize James Earl Jones. Everybody remembers him. Young people who love Star Wars know him as the voice, right? But he was a tremendous baseball fan, and he is a key figure in several baseball movies, right? A Field of Dreams. He's a central figure in Field of Dreams. The Sandlot. He's also in The Sandlot. And then here in Kansas City, when you go to visit our Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, when you sit in the bleachers to watch the feature film, he lended his voice to Bob Kendrick and the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum to give such credible credence to they were stars long before. And he was such a big fan of baseball, and we're going to miss him. And then one of my all-time favorite movies about barnstorming the Negro Leagues is called Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings. If you just want to watch that movie, you can watch it on YouTube. And James Earl Jones plays this fictional Josh Gibson type character where he's a catcher on this barnstorming Negro Leagues baseball team, and he's just tremendous, not only with his voice but his stage presence at who he was. And he will certainly be not only missed by the movie industry, but he'll be missed by the baseball and sports industry as well. So rest in peace and eternal peace, James Earl Jones, the greatest voice known to man.
Absolutely. So now, saying that, did you ever get to meet Pete Rose?
I did not get to meet Pete Rose. Like I said, only met his son and everything. And I thought when I was 9 years old, I was going to be Pete Rose's teammate. Thought the Reds were going to draft me, and I was going to be the guy to replace David Concepcion as shortstop. So I would get an opportunity to play with Pete Rose. And so the Great Eight, what an incredible team that Cincinnati could run out these same 8 guys with Johnny Bench catching, Tony Perez at first, Joe Morgan at second, David Concepcion at shortstop, Pete Rose at third, George Foster in left, Cesar Geronimo in center, and Ken Griffey, not Ken Griffey Jr. in right field. That was an Elite 8 team, and all you had to do was just find a pitcher.
Yep.
Those guys were awesome.
They were awesome, and they weren't called the Red Machine,
Big Red Machine, baby.
Red Machine for nothing. So yeah, they won several World Series in the 70s, and then they played the A's, and that was the other thing. The A's, they ended their time at Oakland. The owner, which I won't even discuss because he's not even worth discussing, but it was great to see the fans come out that day, sellout crowd, and then the players and they the coaches, they all just came out and got to say their goodbyes and everything else. So I know Kansas City doesn't like Charlie Finley because he took the A's from Kansas City, but I think in reference, Huey Kaufman brought in the Royals, and I think that was a positive.
Absolutely.
And so with that, we are at the end of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. I have Tampa Bay tonight.
I'll take Tampa.
Okay, we got Tampa, and so we're at the end of Any Given Sunday. I've got Coach 24, my brother with another mother, Darwin Penny, DJ Scatter, George Walker, and I am Brian Kress, the awesome voice. Be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourself a phenomenal sports weekend. Go Royals.